You know, if you've been following this channel for some time now, you'll know that one of the most important developments in political analysis that we saw coming out of this election was the rise of the election modelers. And so while we were seeing all of these schizophrenic polls going all over the place, both nationally and with the swing states, data analysts were modeling county by county results in each of the swing states. And so while the woke left was enamored with Ann Seltzer's poll from the Des Moines Register that gave Kamala a 3-point win in a state that Trump went on to win by 13 points, we instead drew our analytics from the data analytics model that predicted that Trump would win Iowa by, well, let's just say by at least plus 10. So back with us is to take a much-deserved victory lap as one of my all-time favorite election data analysts, and that's Seth Kesel. Now, you guys saw Seth a couple of weeks before the election with his predictions. I know a number of you contacted me. You said you just loved the video and you found it just so good. Well, it turns out we only give you the best. He was absolutely spot on. You could check out Seth's amazing work at his Substack called Captain K's Corner. Just click on the link below. I'm a subscriber there, and you need to be as well. Seth's approach is the future of election analysis. You are definitely going to want, how did Rush used to say it? You're going to want to be on the cutting edge of societal evolution with Seth's Substack. So definitely click on that link below and subscribe right now. Seth, welcome back. Congrats, my friend. You can take a victory lap now, I see.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Steve, and thank you to your audience. A lot of new people started following my work, and I know this because I see them in the comments on X or on Substack. Hey, I started following your work thanks to Dr. Steve Turley. So thank you for having me back on. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, there are 56 different contests for electoral votes. You have the 50 states, Washington, D.C., and then the 5 split electors of Maine and Nebraska, and I was 56 for 56. So
56 for
very
56.
good.
It was awesome. It was awesome. And I mean, I do try to read critically. I read your stuff months ago. I looked at it, tried to find, okay, where are the soft spots I could press on. Dude, you were solid, man. Solid. I want to start off with you again, talk about being able to fist pump here. If Ann Seltzer is the supposed gold standard, dude, you are divine. Okay. I mean, yeah. Now, I know you wrote an article responding to the poll. I know everybody's watching them. Pretty much everyone who's watching it knows the poll I'm talking about, the stinker par excellence, just literally a few days before the election. You called it out immediately. You wrote, within like 24 hours, you called it out as a total fraud. You want to give us just sort of the gist of the issue you had with that poll and how your analysis differs from hers?
Absolutely. So Ann Seltzer has a good reputation because usually her final poll in significant races is accurate. So she called Trump +9 in 2016 when he won by just over 9 points in Iowa. And in 2020, she called Trump +7. He won by 8.2. So she's been very close. And people have been eyeballing her polls. And in June, very quietly, there was a Trump Biden poll in Iowa, Trump +18.
Right.
Trump 18. You don't just win Iowa by 18 and it's just a boom in the forest somewhere. This is not a vacuum. And on a margin in Iowa like that guarantees a landslide in the upper Midwest, a win in Wisconsin for sure. And maybe even with the new standards in Minnesota, a win there. So wow. That was not an insignificant thing. And then Harris became the nominee, and she put out a Trump +4 in September, which was light, but it was 4 points better than Trump versus Biden in September of 2020. So we were still on pace to have a Trump +10 poll come out sometime at the end of the election season. Well, what came out was Harris +3. And anybody like the election nerds that make all the bets online are watching polls from Iowa to tell what's going on in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin doesn't register voters by party, but the two states track together. And they've never been more than 9.8% apart since before 1960. So you have to go back to 1936 to find them as far apart as they are today, which is at 12.5 points. Well, all 99 counties in Iowa have a Republican Party registration shift, which is the cleanest indicator that any county on that shift should produce a bigger Republican margin than it did last time, or a tighter Democrat margin than it did last time. And guess what, Steve? 98 out of 99 counties in Iowa became more Republican or less Democrat this election than they were last time. The only one that stood out was in southwestern Iowa, a little county called Page County, where both candidates had fewer votes than they had in 2020. So something caused a lack of turnout. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there was something there on election day that caused that, but it tipped the margin by about a point. And this is a Trump plus 45 or more county. So it's not really a drop in the pan. So Seltzer's poll was off. I think it was designed to tank the betting markets and then give the narrative that Harris was winning. But it was very clear that Harris and nobody around her thought she was winning Iowa, or they would have invested resources there to compete. But it's malpractice. It's very irresponsible, and it butted against every real predictor that there is. And of course, as you know, I handle real data and real history.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Your data is far more fixed. It doesn't have this fluidity that pollsters are constantly dealing with, and then that can manipulate as such. You just mentioned it there, which I thought was so interesting, the interrelationship between Iowa and Wisconsin, that Wisconsin has never voted more than 9.8% to the left of Iowa, for the exception. I mean, they this election they went a little bit over, and then I think you said
1936 is how far back you have to go to find a result like that. With Roosevelt and his New Deal and the Great Depression, where both backed Roosevelt, but Wisconsin was by 33 points and Iowa was by 12. So now we have a 12.5-point gap between the two, which is the widest gap in 88 years.
Wow. But can I ask you that, because we saw the entire nation go at least 4 to 6 points to the right, for the exception of those bellwethers, and even Georgia and North Carolina. What do you think's up with that? What's going on there?
Well, it looks to me like Trump is going to finish with about a 2-point popular vote win. And depending on how much ballot stuffing happens in California, Trump will clear a majority of 50%. Now, if it's a million extra ballots happening in California, it might put him under a majority. But he's set to carry the popular vote by 1.5 to 2%. And 4.5% was the certified result in 2020. So you're looking at a 6 or 6.5 point move to the right nationally. Yep. And that came with it's about a 10-point move in California. It's 11 or 12 in New York. It's 12 in New Jersey. It's rightward by 10 in Florida, rightward by 8 in Texas, with a lot of votes moving. And somehow only less than 2 points to the right in Wisconsin, 2 points in North Carolina, 2.5 in Georgia, and about 3 in Pennsylvania. So to me, the narrative that came out a week before the election that Harris would win the Electoral College while losing the popular vote was a nod toward, we're going to relax off the ballot stuffing measures in the populated red or blue states and focus them in Wisconsin. And of course, Harris has a gain in Wisconsin over Joe Biden of about 36,000 votes, whereas she lost 900,000 in New York. Is going to be down a lot in California, lost 500,000 in New Jersey. You get the drift.
Yep. Yeah. And you were worried. I remember you were very worried about Michigan.
Well, Michigan's pretty bad. I think that a Trump margin in Michigan, based on where he's at in Pennsylvania with his vote totals, would have been over 3 or 4 points. And it's still solid. It's 1.4%. I think it was enough to take that Senate seat away from Mike Rogers, who lost it by 20,000, supposedly. Right. I think that the GOP is down 3 or 4 Senate seats that it should have. And that would be Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and of course, Arizona's elections are questionable just on face value.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's your backyard. Yeah. Well, I can't imagine that 47 is after 2020 is not going to make election integrity a major centerpiece of his administration. We can only, at least from what they could do at a federal level, but you had remarkable accuracy with the swing states. Do you want to just, you predicted all 7 swing states would go to Trump, and how close did you come on average?
I had 3 categories of electoral contests. So I would say states, but there's 56 different contests. So there were 43 in the first bucket, which I called safe, and I believe that any of those would have gone to either side by 8 or more points, regardless of who the winner is. There are 43 of them. I got all 43 correct, of course. Now, the margin, 8 or more. So I hit the margins on these 32 out of 43. So some of them Trump overperformed, like New Jersey. I had an 8-point margin minimum for Harris. She only got it by 5.5. So I got the call right, but the margin was off. So I got 32 out of 43 in my tolerances for the minimum margins, but the calls were right. And then we move into the leaners. the leaner states are there's 6 of them, five full states plus Nebraska's second district. And I got all of those correct as well. The margins on there, North Carolina was off by 1.7%. Called that one for Trump. The rest were blue. So I was a 1.5 off on Minnesota. I was a 1.5 off on New Mexico. In Virginia, I was a little more than a point off. And then you have Maine statewide was my biggest miss, and that was 3 points. I had it at 4 points for Harris. It was 7. And then, of course, Nebraska's second vote, it was a 2-point call for me, and it was about 3.5 to Harris. So those were the leaners. And then the decisive states, those do not include North Carolina to me. I've always had that as a Trump leaner. Yeah. But New Hampshire was the only decisive state that I picked for Harris, and she got New Hampshire by 2.8%. My call was Harris plus 1.3. And then we had the other ones that Trump won all of them. So Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. Right now, looks like I'm going to be closest on Pennsylvania or Arizona when the final results trickle in. But my average miss was 1.3% when I tapped.
Dang, dude. That's unreal. That's like Atlas Intel level. I mean, that's crazy.
So, I made all my predictions with a giant asterisk, which is contingent on a free and fair election. And I'm not sure that, like Wisconsin, I had Trump plus 2.3, which would have been light because his lead was closer to 4 points at the end of election night. And that's dwindled down all the way to 0.8%.
Yeah. It's funny how that's happening. And especially with all these other voters who have just kind of disappeared between 2020 and 2024. You introduced me to Duval County, the significance of the bellwether of Duval in Florida for predicting Georgia. That looked like that was spot on as well this election cycle.
Trump got Duval by an eyelash.
It's very thin. Yeah, I saw that.
It's a solid right trend from his last margin in Duval, but he won Duval, which was consistent with the registration shift. All 67 counties in Florida moved to the right. Yeah. And that was consistent with party registration. And Georgia and Duval moved together. Georgia votes right of Duval. That was consistent as well. Georgia at Trump plus 2.2. Florida also has a national bellwether, Miami-Dade County. Now, it's only a Republican national bellwether. And Trump is the 8th Republican presidential nominee to carry Miami-Dade County. And all 8 campaigns that carried Miami-Dade County won the presidency.
That bodes well for the future because it looks like Miami-Dade has gone full right. It's astonishing realignment there. You crushed Arizona. I think you gave them, what were you at, 5.8 or so?
My pessimistic margin on Arizona was Trump plus 1.3 or 1.4. And my registration model was Trump plus 5.8. I averaged them out, and then I split the difference to the registration model because it seemed more accurate to me, and I got Trump plus 4.7. Right now, we're at 5.6, so I'm within a point. And I think that the remaining ballots are going to be favorable for Trump from Pima County on Election Day, plus the outlying counties. Maricopa is just about done. And by the way, Maricopa is going to come up short of its 2020 ballot count by about 75,000. So, which is interesting to me because Maricopa County has not failed to produce more ballots each successive election since 1944, before people were moving to the desert. So I think that this may justify that, yes, there were quite a few more ballots than we thought there would have been in the 2020 election in Maricopa County.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I cannot see how we're not going to.
Future proves past, Steve.
Yep. I love it. What's your take on Nevada finally breaking for the Republic? I mean, it's been teasing Republicans for the last couple of cycles, but it finally did it. And you predicted it, by the way. You predicted
Nevada. A lot of people had Nevada. Atlas Intel had Nevada going Republican. I think Trafalgar was close to it at the end, and the registrations always bore out that Trump should carry Nevada, even with the last 2 cycles where he didn't carry Nevada. But also, Nevada informed me on Arizona because no Republican has ever carried Nevada and failed to carry Arizona in a presidential election. So if you have Nevada red, you should have Arizona red. That's another one of my check sheets that I do when I'm making these calls. But it doesn't surprise me. Trump was much better with the Latino working class, stronger with the white working class, had support of culinary unions. And you have the Democrats, of course, were harmed by a voter roll purge, which somehow that only ever hurts the Democrats.
Only hurts one side, doesn't it? Yeah. So let's talk Texas. What you were just talking about, the realignment with the Latino vote. I mean, the Rio Grande counties in Texas going for Trump. Very similar to what the movement we're seeing with Miami-Dade in Florida. Did you even imagine something like this? You want to go over these Texas maps for us a little bit?
Yeah, this is one of the most amazing accomplishments that President Trump had this election, and it came in a safe red state that went far to the right. Now, South Texas as a region is loosely defined, so it's not defined like we might describe the Panhandle of Idaho. Right, South Texas is generally thought of as being the counties that are south of San Antonio, and extend down to the Rio Grande River along the coastal bend there. So South Texas is pretty loosely defined. But this has been that one area back in the old days where people would look at Texas and be like, yeah, there's one big blue spot right here. This is the blue spot of Texas. Now, the good news about the blue spot of Texas is relative to the rest of the state, it doesn't have a lot of votes. But you can see that Bush won them by less than 4 points in 2004. That was a special home field advantage for the cowboy George W. in his home state. And even then, most of the counties, especially along the Rio Grande River, were blue. He won Cameron County down in the southern tip. That's Brownsville. You have a pretty big military influence there as well. And then up towards the northern part of South Texas, that's Republican frequently. You're looking at the area southeast of San Antonio down to Corpus Christi, which is usually a light shade of red. Then you get the big Latino swing for Obama. Obama won 70% of the Latino vote nationally in 2008. It's a 17-point win in this region for Obama, 91,000 margin. Then it increases against Romney. Wow. Despite Texas becoming more Republican, the Latinos hated Mitt Romney, and you got a 20-point win for Obama. Then you've got a similar win for Hillary Clinton, 117,000 against Donald Trump. And then we get the trend. Ooh. So Trump comes within 3 points of flipping this region in 2020, gets some notable flips, especially Zapata County, which had not backed a Republican presidential nominee since Warren Harding in 1920. That was in 2020. And he was close in Starr County, which is right south of Zapata County, 5 points off when he lost that sucker by about 50 points or more in 2016. And then in 2024, you can see Trump won this region by more than 13 points. So swinging that 98,000 off the Clinton plus 117, you're looking at a shift of more than 215,000 votes in favor of President Trump. And that is, this is absolutely unbelievable. And not only did the margin come in like that, but he had all these flips. Maverick County, Eagle Pass, it's a site of major border problems. That was in the news last year when Texas had its border issues. Then Webb County, which is Laredo. Webb County hasn't backed a Republican candidate for president since, I believe, 1912. And then you move down to Starr County. 1892 was the last time it backed a Republican, and it wasn't even drawn in the same boundaries that it is today. Trump got Duval County. Trump also flipped Hidalgo County, which no Republican has won since Nixon in 72, and he got Cameron County. And Willacy County, 1972. There's a ton of old school blue hangouts that got flipped red by Trump in 2020 and 2024.
Wow. I was also thinking of Miami-Dade, how they voted for Hillary, didn't they, about 30 points in 2016 and then flipped literally the other way.
It's a superstorm. You know, Latino voters, they vote on the economy a lot. And before Trump came around, Texas Republicans, I used to be one before I moved to Arizona, Texas Republicans always talked about how to win the Latino vote. Now, other than talking to them like they're real human beings, which is my strategy, is the standard calculus was economics, security, and education. So talking weak on the border makes you worse with the Latinos, just like not talking about trade issues makes you weak with the white working class. Now, in Texas, it used to be maybe 10 years ago that once the family income hit 50,000, the trend towards the Republican Party was much stronger. So once basic income needs are met, the voters are more likely to consider voting with their social values. But until that happens, social values don't put food on the table. So that's why you have these minority groups that vote Democrat. So now we have Trump with a strong border agenda and economic prosperity that has been proven in time, and you get a trend like this. And honestly, with the Latinos like this, the ones that have been here multi-generational, I think they're probably gone from the Democrats forever.
Wow. How do you think that translates? I talked to you last. You were talking about the possibility of seeing real. I knew you have your own unique categories, but actually seeing alternative swing states like New Hampshire and Maine and Jersey and Minnesota and New Mexico possibly possibly Virginia, if we could start breaking up Northern Virginia there, break up the deep state and send them to Arkansas or something like that. Well, how do you think this shift between the white and non-white working class to a Trumpian Republican Party is going to affect, say, for example, New Jersey in 2028?
I've made a list of 10 states, and I sent them to you on a map. I sent it over to your producer before we got on here, and if you want to pull it up, we'll talk it. I'm referring to that one right there. So these are the states triaged for priorities of election integrity. Now, by doing this, your audience may want to stone me. Too bad I'm on the other side of a screen. I've taken a lot of heat for this. And when I mean the top 10, it doesn't mean that the other 40 are not important. It means if my priorities are getting through this decade with Republican presidential wins and Senate wins and House wins to the greatest extent possible to preserve majorities with limited time and resources and feasible outcomes, then these would be my priorities. So when I have Washington State in green as a low priority election integrity state, it doesn't mean I don't like Washington. I don't like the people in Washington, and I don't think Washington needs to be fixed. It means that it is going to require, like along with California or Hawaii, a major federal action.
It's not low-hanging fruit.
Or court decision to vacate the mail-in ballot fraud going on, the registration fraud. So in a sense, it's not going to factor in getting somebody like Trump or somebody as close to Trump as possible elected in 2028. Now, the ones that are in red are the 7 the battleground states that Trump just won, including North Carolina. So Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are enough to guarantee the Electoral College, especially now that Texas is solid. I had worried about Texas, but I'm not worried about it anymore. In fact, I think the Democrats may pull up camp out of there now for the foreseeable future. And then we add 3 more in those red groups as the high priority. And they're reflecting the trends seen in the 2024 election. Virginia, which was Harris plus 5, and New Jersey, Harris plus 5.5, and
New Hampshire.
The final one is New Hampshire, which was Harris plus 2.8. And then we have the yellow ones, which the GOP needs to get hammering on. And it's the only reason they're in yellow is because I can only fit 10 in a top 10. So I think that the GOP needs to start investing in the urban areas in Illinois and in New York. And New Mexico is a tough lift. It's a very poor Latino working class. It's a very poor state. But the trend is there. It's also only 5 electoral votes. Texas, of course, and Florida, just not to neglect the work there. It's a big, valuable slate of electoral votes. And Alaska hopefully will be getting rid of ranked choice voting, which will keep Alaska red. So we have this priority map. So what does it look like in the future? Well, first off, the Latino vote was bigger than the black vote this election for the first time in the history of U.S. elections. So the Latino vote is outgrowing the black vote, and this will probably help accelerate the trend of black voters, especially black men, to the Republican Party, because they're already feeling neglected by the Democrats who are prioritizing, and it's not fair for me to group all Latinos here, but they're prioritizing illegal aliens over them. So you're going to start breeding resentment as the Latinos the Democrats go back to pander to Latinos to try to get them back. They're also growing. Latinos are growing in population share in eastern Pennsylvania. They have them in the northern part of Virginia and North Carolina, Georgia. So they're a smaller percentage there in North Carolina and Georgia, but not zero. Those are important trends for the future. And with Texas solid, if North Carolina can be made solid like Texas, that's 235 electoral votes. And in the next census, you're going to be looking at 240 plus, maybe 250 just as a starting point. So this could bring about, if elections get cleaned up under Trump, this could bring out a Republican boom similar to the one that was seen after the Civil War all the way up until the Great Depression.
Wow. An FDR kind of realignment, as it were, that lasts for generations. Yeah.
There was 65 plus years of Republican rule, and then a depression, of course, that was blamed on Hoover and Republican.
Right. Then the Democrats, right, were in the White House for over 20, and then Congress for 40, and basically created the deep state. That's why I've always said, the Democrats own DC, whereas Republicans merely rent. This is brilliant stuff. So I also, on your Twitter, on your X feed, you said that there's an ability that you might have if people can vote for you to become a part of the administration for election reform. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know how serious those links are. People can go on there and nominate anybody. You can nominate Bugs Bunny, but somebody went on there and created a page for me as a potential nominee for the administration, and I shared it. So I don't have the link handy, but you'll probably put it in the comments. So if you think that I should be part of the Trump administration and want to talk about my skills in election reform, I would be honored to serve. At the same time, I'm leaving this with an open hand for God to use me how He's supposed to use me.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Seth, you crushed it, dude. Obviously, he used you very powerfully in this election. I know you brought a lot of peace and stability to our listeners during a very tumultuous and just very nervous time. What is the old saying? This the left has TDS, but the right from 2020 has PTSD. It's just so everybody is just was on edge. But I got several comments from people saying that our interview a couple of weeks before the election really encouraged them tremendously. And so, how can people keep in touch with you and your amazing analysis?
You can follow me at Substack, skesel.substack.com. If you want to support my work, it's only $6 a month for a paid membership. And I do put a lot of free content downrange because I do everything I can to avoid the label of a grifter or profiteer, which is a really pretty nasty thing that people like to throw out. But once you get knocked off that gangplank and have to swim on your own, then you have to find your way to make it. But they're True Social and X at Real S Kesel. I also have a Telegram channel, which I guess I'll change the name now that the 2024 election is over. So anyway, I'm all over the place. I'm going to try and dial back a little bit now that the election is over and focus on my writing on Substack. But we have a lot of work to do, and we cannot do the same thing we did last time and make memes for 4 years and laugh while the left plots.
That's right. That's very well said. Seth Kesel, everyone, definitely subscribe to his Substack. Just click on the link below and you can do that. I'm a subscriber. It's definitely worth it. You'll love the information that he brings to you each and every week. Seth, you're the best, man. Congrats. You a much, much well-deserved victory lap for you.
Well, thanks a lot, Dr. Steve. It's good to be back on your show, and I'm looking forward to coming back in the future.
Absolutely. Anytime. Open invitation.